something as far as, um, what was your greatest accomplishment? And, which is nice to, see something
Yeah,
like that in there too. So,
it is. That actually kind of goes over to something that was one of my next questions is do you feel like it's important that people actively consider what their legacy is going to be on many different levels, and then in turn uh, taking that consideration and acting with deliberate actions and using that to make very intentional choices? Do you think that's important?
yes, it is. And I think, as um, I speak into a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are new, young to money, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that you can do with money. One, it can tear your family apart if there's not a precise and known plan, because there's
Mhm.
interpretations. Like, unfortunately, I went through an ugly situation with my siblings where there was a lot of greed, and when it came time for the estate planning, there were six different interpretations of what mom and dad wanted. So if you
Right.
don't, have clarity, and, sometimes you have to have some tough love, if you got a lazy Larry or a sassy Susan in your genealogy, then,
Mhm.
it's important to make sure that you are, you're addressing those situations before it gets out of hand, because what happens is, um, then when it comes time for that money to be passed down or handed down, if there's not clear, concise understanding of what you want done with that. If you want to donate part of that to an endowment for scholarships, or, my mom was a teacher, so, she really had a thing for education. And so,
Mhm.
if you don't have those specifics in there, um, your true being of you've worked so hard and what you really wanted to do, if that's not noted, and that's not um, carried out, then, to me, it's kind of all in vain. So I think it's really important to stress, what you want to do, and how you want to leave that behind. And, that's the importance of having a guardian, so that you choose somebody that is kind of your commandant, and will, if it comes a point where they need to step in, they will, and ensure that your wishes are carried out. Because as we work so hard for everything, we as children, um, we shouldn't expect entitlement. And I think a lot of people think that sometimes. Um, you know, Municipality, we're all, the umbilical cord was cut a long time ago.
Mhm.
And, that means that, we each need to, do our own thing. And if mom and dad want to leave everything to Goodwill, then, let that be their wishes, and make sure that that's carried out. So yes, documenting it is very important. And, if you do have some money and you want to, I look at Dolly Parton. I think she's probably the best example of this. She's got the Dolly Library, and any child under the age of 5 that goes to her website and signs up, she sends a free book every month to that child from birth till 5. And I just think, how amazing is that? What a legacy, to
Yep.
impact and to change lives. And, that's something I know, and I'm sure will be carried on, even long after she's gone.
Oh, I'm
So,
sure. And I do also appreciate how you're putting the explanation of with your family in this situation, the importance of putting those wishes down, because the way I tell a lot of people is you're putting those wishes together, whether it be a will or a trust, what have you, even things to the extent of putting together life insurance wishes,
mhm.
is when you're doing those things, it's the ultimate I love you to your family, because you're putting your wishes together, but you're also taking a lot of that burden away from them. Because when that time comes, they're at the worst possible moment in life, probably. It's one of their most most painful moments, and to be able to take that away, to take that extra burden away from them, is really, in my book, the ultimate I love you, because you've already crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and you've taken care of that, so that all that they have to do is think about where they're at that moment, and not have to think about, okay, what did mom and dad want, what did Uncle James want, those kinds of things. Nobody has to worry about that. And you're
Exactly.
also able to put into action to make sure that you can take care of those people, so that those next concerns of, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay for the house, or how are we going to be able to pay for these these estate costs and so forth, all of those things, you're also able to take care of those concerns. So the immediate and then the follow-up concerns can be taken care of. And so it is very important. And like I say, it's in my book, it's the ultimate I love you to your family, is saying I love you enough that I don't want you to have to worry about this. And so,
Exactly.
oh, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one in the course that we do, we call it the I love you bundle. And what it means is, we package everything together so that, because the thing is even as a husband and wife, one might be paying the bills, but if something happens to the person that's paying the bills,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully couples are working together, but a lot of times everybody kind of does their own thing. And so if they don't know, where all the accounts are at, or, the IRAs, or, so what we do is we actually gather through, in the course that I built out, we actually go through and gather all that important information. And then we put it in the love bundle. And that means that when the time comes, you can, tell somebody that, here's the lock and key. I love you guys enough that I don't want you to have to go through even any more sorrow. And,
Mm-hmm.
I just think of, there was a lady that reached out to me on Facebook, and her husband suddenly died of a heart attack unexpectedly. And
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't sure what she was going to do. And, she announced that she had lost him. And if anybody, because he had kind of a small business too, if anybody needed anything, to contact her. She had his phone, and she was trying to pick up all the pieces. And the importance of, especially in our digital world, make sure that you have some system in place for your digital passwords, because some of that information you can easily get locked out of, and eventually you can get back into it, but it may take a death certificate to get that happen, and it can cause a lot of hardship. And so I
Sure.
always tell people to make sure that those kinds of things are written down, or you're communicating, where to find them or how you're doing them. So that way, because a sudden death, there's enough stress already. And then all of a sudden you've got to, you know, figure out where the checking accounts are, or what's going to be shut down because, how are they set up? Are they dual accounts? Or, I mean, there's just a lot of stress. And, I had reached out and just said, if she needed anything, let me help her. And then, a day later, she came back and she said she actually found out that because she was afraid she was going to have to go back to her 9-to-5 job, because she had a small business that she was doing, and she was afraid about losing the house. So not only was it the death, and I just felt for her, because here she had the loss of her husband, but that her main focus and her biggest fear was, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive?
Right.
And that's a scary feeling. And that shouldn't be. She should be able to honor his death. And not that I'm saying that, but she should be able to mourn that and be able to be available for her children. And, but, I mean, she went right into the panic mode of financial, how am
Mhm.
I going to take care of this? And then she did put out a couple days later that she found out her husband had taken out um, a an unknown life insurance policy through work, and it was going to be enough to cover, and that's one thing I want to stress to people that are listening.
Mhm.
I encourage you to really look up in your state of how much it costs to die, because everybody thinks that it's, oh, I'm just going to die. There's a lot of expenses that go into that, and it's anywhere from 12,000 to 15,000 up to $25,000, depending on the state that you live in, to be buried. To cover all the costs that are involved in that, and people don't realize that. And that bill doesn't go away, because that's the mortuary, that's the funeral. I mean, that's
Yep.
flowers, and I'm saying you can cut back on those things, but that's a real expense. And if you aren't responsible, and if you don't, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to leave a legacy? I mean, think of that wife and those children. Think of how much their legacy changed, or his legacy changed in their mind, knowing that he had provided that life insurance so that those expenses, they weren't going to lose their home. Now they get to stay in their home. I've talked to so many people that, unexpected death, and they, the mom had to, go back to work, and they almost lost the house, and some of them did lose the house. And, just that turmoil, it's enough turmoil losing somebody, but then to have all that financial burden, it can really be very, very, very painful and detrimental to everybody. So that's why it's important to, document those things, put those wishes down, and, it's okay. If you don't want to tell them about life insurance policies, I think that that's something that's a personal, you gotta, but at the same time, make sure that you're being responsible and leaving something, because if you don't, you're leaving that to your family to have to pick up the pieces.
Right. And, just in addition to, the keeping of the home is, one of the things, especially for younger families that I will tell is, when you have children, maybe they're in sports, or they're in band, or, maybe a daughter is in ballet or gymnastics, or whatever the activities are that the children are in. Think about what those expenses are, because if something happens to one of the parents now while they're still young, all of those things are in jeopardy. And then that child's
Exactly.
future education could be in jeopardy. And so, it's thinking about all of those things and then just making appropriate steps, because it doesn't have to break the bank to take those appropriate steps. It just takes time. And this is one of those areas where I'm glad that I work with a lot of veterans, is because they can they have a thicker skin. We're a little thicker skinned on this, and so I'll suck it up. Just suck it up. Swallow your pride, suck it up, make the decision, have this conversation. It's not a fun conversation to have, but have it, because once you have it and you're done with it, then it gets a lot easier. But you do have to have that conversation. Just ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It's just like you ignore taking care of your teeth. They're not going to get better. They will go away. And so these financial problems are only going to get worse if you don't have that conversation. And so it is very important. And so many families, I've seen situations where a spouse passes away, and then another spouse is forced to not only either make that decision of what do I do with the home, but sometimes in order to keep the home, they go into a quick rebound marriage in order to keep the things, keep their security. And then what is that going to do to the kids? What is that going to do to that person, having to make those kinds of decisions that, taking a little bit of time probably was more appropriate, but they didn't do it because of what they could have lost. And so it's just really, taking care of things the right way. Give the family the proper opportunity to mourn, and take care of, making sure that your spouse is able to stay in the home. Not having to make those.
Exactly. And one thing I want to speak into this right now, because I have come across so many people in, the line of work that I've done with this. If there is a remarriage, please, especially if you've come, if your family has left you some money and you have something, please make sure that it is documented and that the children know about it. I have come across so many people that have found out after probate that there was actually wills out there and they just weren't presented. And, one extreme, the mother actually went off to Europe and blew the whole estate because she didn't present the will. And the daughter was left, just trudging, trying to make ends meet, only to find out, after the mother had come back from this, rendezvous for 6-7 years, that there was a will, and it just wasn't honored. And so, and another situation where there was a mother that had gotten some financial endowments and remarried, and then she passed away, and with the understanding and belief that her children would get that. And 6 months before the new or the stepfather passed away, there was a new will written